Now, let's imagine a group of people coming together to worship God. And within that group emerges a man named Job that a lot of people love. He's kind, he hates evil, and has the richest house and farm in the entire city or surrounding country. Many people look toward him for leadership. This sort of fellow might draw some jealousy, though, from amongst the people in the surrounding neighborhoods. In fact, there's three of the chaps. They often hurtle off into a corner every time the group is assembled, and they begin whispering to one another, saying things to each other like, "Does Job fear God for nothing?" Another one says, "Has not God made a hedge of protection around him and about his house and about all that he has on every side?" And then a third man says, "God has blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But I bet if God puts forth his hand right now and destroys everything that he has, Job will curse God right to his face." This was about the same speech that each of the three men had every time the children of God were gathered together for worshiping purposes. And every time they said those things, it was as if they were in God's very presence saying them right to his face, which they practically were. Therefore, God decided to let such things happen to his servant Job. Or should I say, God did those things to Job himself, so as to prove to the three complainers that Job would surely not curse God to God's face. And it just so happened that Job, just afterwards, was afflicted by God, for again, Job himself had said that. "Though God slay me, yet will I trust him, but I will maintain my own ways before him." So he stayed true. Now, when Job's three frenemies heard of all this evil that was come upon him, as if their wishes had finally come true, they came every one from his own place: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and to comfort him. Comfort him? No. But they were happy to see his miserable condition, and they perhaps merely came to see him curse God to his face, like they wanted him to do. For surely these three men were the Satan that had gathered together and who were Job's adversaries. They actually had condemned him, but the joke was on them, for all of it would backfire on them. And then they needed God's forgiveness for the evilness that was in their hearts toward Job. And not only, but Job himself would have to intervene with God on their behalf. See Job 42, verses 7 through 9. Now, that was my own interpretation of what the first few chapters of Job was actually trying to say to us. Whereas one can easily leap forward and say that I'm just stretching things way too far with my own words here, I'm just going to come right back with, well, this is how I'm seeing the situation from Job's own metaphoric words. In fact, we have only about 3 chapters of these types of parables. And then most of the book afterward, well, a lot of it, that is, deals with Job's conversations with those 3 men. The conversation between those 4 is really the heart of the book and the most detailed. Those 4 men are the big stars of the story. And so the story really concerns mostly them, not really Job's wife or Job's kids or others in the surrounding country. But the story focuses on and concerns those 4 men. Job with his problems, and those men with their adversarial accusations and evil intentions. They were being Satan to Job, but also with the curses in their hearts, they were being a Satan to God also. And as I pointed out in my interpretation just above, those conversations that God was having with Satan was, as it was with the chief priests in Jesus' parable, more of what was going on in those men's hearts flashing in front of God so blatantly that led to all of what was happening, or what had happened. But they could have verbally said things too, and that really doesn't make much of a difference because of their own hearts were still being evil nonetheless. You could almost say that the whole thing had served at least 2 purposes: rebuking Job for what he himself was still lacking in his life, and to the saving of those 3 other men who had evil intentions in their hearts.